Think about the times you let me go.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're squeezing in one last video before the new war hits today. This one is a quick one. We're gonna take a look, or try to take a look, at two forgotten older weapons that once held a prime spot in the meta. These are weapons from many years ago and truly shaped gameplay back then. But now, almost no one uses them. Maybe a few people here and there, but they are mostly relegated to primers, or some other weird strat. But as you know, Sisters of Parvos brought with it galvanized mods and weapon arcades, and this completely changed the potential of gunplay forever, restoring balance between guns and melee. What weapons are we looking at today? Well, the first one is the Torid. This is a very curious gun with innate toxin damage. Shooting it leaves behind a cloud, no different than the gas status effect, except it has a fixed radius, does the damage type of what you modded on the weapon, and most importantly, can inflict whatever status you put on it. Leveling this weapon was honestly extremely annoying, and I didn't have high hopes for it as it has lackluster crit chance and a horrible fire rate with small magazine accompanied by, at first glance, low base damage. How can a weapon that only shoots at 1.5 fire rate do only 40 damage per shot? Well, I guess DE probably decided to balance it around the clowns it leaves behind. Whatever. So I tried many different builds with this at first and wasn't too impressed. But then I realized something. You're basically getting an AoE weapon with this that continues to damage over time, basically turning any status effect you want into an AoE and a cluster of various procs. At first, I thought of gas, but this weapon has shit-based damage, and gas is capped at 10 stacks, so gas wouldn't work well for it. Then I thought of electric, which actually scales with elements, but that was also underwhelming because the lower base damage of the weapon makes it difficult to really kill enemies with chaining, since electric doesn't truly chain on everything in range, only most of them. Electric also requires me to use 3 mod slots for elements, which I really didn't want to do, and because the weapon was base toxin instead of electric, my electric weighting really wasn't high enough to monopolize the status procs when I made it viral electric. Then I remembered my Spear X I made originally. I used impact progenitors and hemorrhage to turn the AoE into slash. The only reason I did this was because pistols are missing a key component that makes many crit stick primaries able to slash regardless of innate IPS, hunter munitions. This Torid could accomplish the same thing, if I could just make it crit. And it even had lingering AoE that could apply even more slash. And slash would solve the low base damage problem since it would bypass armor completely. There I had it, a bona fide, crude AoE slash weapon. The cloud has a base damage value of 40 shown, but the direct hit with the dart is 100. Therefore, the main target I shoot would actually scale off 140 toxin, which is enough to get decent slash ticks going and start stacking weapon arcades. Then, the best discovery dawned on me. Galvanized Aptitude works on Torid. Not only does it work on both the main shot and clown, but it also works multiplicatively on this weapon, like Eclipse. If you haven't seen it yet, in the description is a Google Doc made by a couple of friends from the official Warframe community server that describes every weapon interaction with Galvanized CO for guns. If the weapon is not listed there, it is most likely a hit scan weapon. All unlisted hit scan weapons work like normal with gun CO. There may be 1 or 2 weapons missing, I don't know, but everything that interacts abnormally, or is a projectile weapon, or some other unique thing is listed on that document. This document tells you if gun CO works as advertised on the weapon, or better or worse than normal, or even whether it interacts multiplicatively like Eclipse, instead of additive base damage like Vex armor. It is an extremely useful document that I've been referring to when testing out new builds, so go check it out to see if your favorite weapon got lucky with the spaghetti code. If you want to edit this file, you will need to save a copy for your own use, as the master spreadsheet is view only. Anyways, this is the Torid build I settled on. Being innate toxin, I only needed a single cold 60/60 mod to make viral. Since we're sourcing slash from crits, we don't care about elemental weight and we just want as much as we can get. Now, this weapon doesn't really need melee primers, but if you want to take it beyond base steel path, I would recommend it to make use out of the gun CO. Torid only procs viral and slash normally on this build, which means you're only getting an extra 160% final damage from this mod. But if you bring a melee primer setup to proc as many different status effects as possible, such as my Zaw primer I will show later, you can easily end up with 6 or 7 status effects on your enemies, resulting in a 480 or 560% final damage increase from gun CO. For the other mods on the build, I did mod Critical Delay because we will be using this weapon with Arcane Avenger to land mostly crits. The base crit multiplier was 2.0, so it was actually worth making a hybrid build. Obviously, we would slot Vital Sense to take advantage of this. Vial Acceleration is mandatory on the weapon because of how slow it shoots, and I would even recommend stacking Arcane Acceleration as well if you can fit it on your frame. Now, why not Point Strike? Well, that's because we really want those crits to maximize our slash reliability. Galvanized Multi-Shot is obvious, and the Prime Bane is there to double dip our slash procs for 2.4 times more damage. Primary Merciless because you won't be getting headshot kills with slash, and Merciless cuts the weapon's frequent reloads from such a small magazine down to just 1.3 seconds from 1.7. The frame build for today? It doesn't matter if I use XAKU, you can use anything. The only requirement is Ensnare, Combat Discipline, and Avenger. You want a lower rank combat discipline so you don't kill yourself with a self-damage, but this self-damage can proc Arcane Avenger, which provides all your weapons and certain abilities with 45% flat crit. This pushes Torid to a much needed 90% crit chance. The other arcane, like I said, can be Arcane Acceleration. You can also opt for Arcane Rage if you want, since you'll be probably aiming at heads with Ensnare. Alternatively, you can eschew both since the build still works without them, and slot Arcane Energize if your frame needs it instead. Now, the melee primer, I'm bringing a Za made to play Kiwar, Sikala, and Iquana 2 Jai. This gives it the highest status chance possible while retaining fast melee swings for Exodia Contagion so you can get back to doing what you want sooner. Animation locks suck. Sikala because stabs and polearms have the fastest quick melee animations, and the extra range makes building combo easier for Weeping Wounds. The build? It's a Za setup to proc as many different elements as possible to take advantage of Eclipse scaling gun CO on Torid. You can see how even split these elements are. I left the mods mostly unranked so that the elements have similar weighting to the original IPS. This is a 12x Weeping Wounds build, which allows the Za to reach over 200% status at 12x combo. The Exodia Contagion gives the Za AoE, meaning we can proc all the ensnare targets at once. Last thing's thing makes statuses last longer if you aren't dealing with them right away. Prime Fury makes swinging even smoother, and Drifting Contact also gives more combo duration on top of status chance. We're actually comboing this with a stat-stick pistol primer today, Epitaph. The build on this one is mostly relevant, but you can copy it if you do want to use an Epitaph primer. The main purpose is actually for secondary dexterity, which gives us an extra 7.5 seconds combo duration to our melee. This increases our Za's total combo duration to 22.5 seconds, and we're even pairing it with Neramon for power spike so that it basically never decays. A hit or two with your melee every minute will keep it topped up at 12x combo for maximum priming potential. Now you've already seen how this was performing on Steel Path as well as some test setups earlier in this video, but I'll include the official showcase here. You basically just spawn in these corrupted heavy gunners, then ensnare them. I would recommend building up your Za's combo here because a 0-stack Torid is a little bit difficult to kill with. The extra viral stacks will help, even if you can't take advantage of gun CO until Torid gets a kill. Once you hit 220, throw a contagion and start shooting your Torid. Shoot the heads to get extra fat damage on the main enemies so you can start building up weapon arcanes and galvanized stacks. Once the first enemy dies, everything gets a lot faster. Look, now they're all dead, so let's spawn them again, and we'll ensnare and prime them up with a throw. Then we can shoot the Torid. Look at how fast they die. It's near instant. This is due to the lingering clouds being able to proc tons more of slash and still take advantage of gun CO multiplicative scaling. Innate Toxin also makes modding easier by saving an extra slot for even more damage. Now if we try it again without a primer, you'll see they do still die, albeit noticeably slower, but this is pretty good for a relic of a weapon, right? That has been pretty much considered dead up until this point. The Torid has returned, and it can kick some serious ass. Alright, so the second weapon for today was supposed to be Pox. I'll skip past all the testing and just show you the build I ended up with. This is a viral electric build, but you'll notice the elemental distributions are screwy. This is because the weapon is innate toxin as well and causes the viral weight to be too high. I opted for viral electric because Hunter Munitions doesn't exist for pistols, and because once again the damage is too low for gas. It also leaves clouds behind, which is probably what DE intended to fuel its damage. Gun CO is additive on this weapon, but has near 400% scaling of normal. Unfortunately, the wasted slots on this weapon to reach decent electric weight is too much, because guns don't have combo scaling like melee to make up for dead slots like this. Even the unranked viral mod to get optimal electric weight is not enough. In fact, it even struggles to crit because it has 1% crit chance, but I was running out of mod slots on this weapon. Sharpened Bullets ends up being 1% worse overall for final damage output compared to Hornet Strike, if you can believe it. I'm using Deadhead for longer lasting stacks and because electric procs can headshot. There was even an arcane precision in this setup. If you have a viral melee primer, you could slot gas instead for more consistent damage output and another status on Pox, but I wouldn't recommend using this weapon to DPS because, well, Sancti Castanas exist. The XAKU in this setup is using Arcane Avenger and Arcane Precision. Here is the showcase with Viral Electric. And here's the showcase with Gas Electric with my Zaw as a viral applicator. As you can see, it can kill, but it's even slower than the Torid and is even more restrictive in its use and clunkier. Now contrast what you just saw to this. Yes, this is the true power of Sancti Castanas, and I feel a lot of people have forgotten this. There's one thing I want to mention about this weapon though. So I initially modded Viral on this weapon since it has fair status and you can throw so many Castanas out. Unfortunately, sticking surfaces seems to make the weapon ignore all status procs inflicted by mods and will only do electric procs. Good for raw damage and chaining, but bad for debuffing status effects like Viral. Viral will apply if you detonate the shots in midair, but this is poop and a very annoying playstyle to use. If you need Viral, use a melee primer instead, but as you can see, the weapon doesn't really need it either for base steel path, so let's look at that build, shall we? Because of the bug I mentioned earlier, we're building Pure Electric. This weapon already has Pure Electric weight and way higher base damage than the Pox. Electric also actually scales with mods, unlike Gas. So we're just playing to this weapon's strengths. Since we have no other elements on this build, and this weapon actually doesn't work with Gun CO, and has Force Electric procs on anything you hit if you stick an enemy with it, we end up with a bunch of empty slots. These slots have been filled with doubled up crit chance and crit damage mods because, well, that's all the weapon can do. Creeping Bullseye since fire rate is irrelevant on this weapon. You can easily stick heads, and Electric can chain headshots to kills, so Galvanized Crosshairs should easily proc on grouped targets. Together, these push Castanas to 148.8% crit chance for a fair amount of oranges, and if you're also running Avenger, you'll see almost only oranges. Likewise, we have doubled up with Prime Target Cracker and Sharpened Bullet since crit damage mods are always lacking on builds. While you do have to be aiming to get the effect of Crosshairs and Sharpened Bullets, this does help with sticking headshots to proc headshot chaining kills for secondary Deadhead, which will also double dip the 30% multiplier to 69. Nice. And consistently keeping crosshair stacks alive. Primed Bane to double dip to electric procs for 2.4 times more damage. You can also only have 6 Castanas out at once, so a fully stacked galvanized diffusion lets you max out all 6 with just 2 throws, coincidentally the same number of throws as your magazine size. Optimal DPS, I love it. Now this setup hits so hard you don't actually need any arcanes on your frame, but I'm once again running Arcane Precision and Avenger with Combat Discipline just to give a fair comparison to Pox. Test time? Well, you've already seen it enough earlier. Let's just fill the rest up with Steel Path footage of the Castanas. And you know what the best part of this is? Every single one of the weapons I've showed you today has sky-high disposition. So you want to take them further with rivets. Oh boy, the Torid has 1.3, the Pox has 1.2, and the Castanas, curiously, sits at 1.35 out of 1.5. Now's the time to pick up some cheaper ones if you want and try them out. And there's your forgotten weapons of today. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering the Sisters Parvos, Plague Star, and even New War updates. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. I'm gonna be the first to get out more info on the New War when it drops later today. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Stay tuned for the Caliban builds, and thank you all for watching. See you all next time.